groups. And so they're very interested in iridology as well, because a lot of them had experienced changes in their eyes significantly with their detoxing after transitioning to a more raw living lifestyle. And so that's where that kind of came into play a bit for me.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and go through this. What is iridology? It's the study of the iris of the eye, according to Dr. Jensen, to determine strengths and weaknesses of the body. And so, now with the new terminology coming out with IPA, they're saying the eye doesn't change. They're saying you're basically just looking at somebody's genetic blueprint. And so there's some differing ideas going on with iridology now. Dr. Jensen used to say you can look at the iris, look at all the markings in the eye, see where there's strengths and weaknesses. I still see that. I still believe in that because I've used it for so many years. I still do see the eyes change. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But this is Dr. Jensen's book here on the left side. And I did work at his 100th anniversary where they invited me to take pictures of eyes from his symposium. That was very exciting. So, but he was a great man. Now, basically, the history of iridology, the originator of iridology was Ignaz von Pestli. Okay, at 11 years old, an owl was stuck in his tree, apparently, and when he freed the owl's leg broke. And what he noticed was lines appearing in the iris. Okay, we know those as transversals. We know those as markings, various markings where there has been injury. We see those in the eyes. And so we watch those, and as there's healing going on, then those markings change. This is supposedly the birth of iridology, okay, which is about 1861. It's been around a long time. Unfortunately, it's not used here in the United States as far as the medical profession. They don't acknowledge it. But I have to say, when I used to work at Stanford at the university, I worked there for 15 years. And when I was working there, they did say that when a white ring forms around the outside of the iris, they find that people that have that marking have a more tendency towards strokes. And so even though they said that, and we know that as a sodium, cholesterol, hardening of the arteries type of ring, it's still, the medical profession still doesn't acknowledge iridology, which is okay. I think that it's better that it's not regulated and that it's not licensed, so that we can practice and we don't have to all fall under certain laws and certain rules where it's controlled. And, Okay, Herring's law of cure. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's very important. It's the basis of healing. It's the way the body heals itself. Okay, everything starts from within out, from the head down, and reverse order as the symptoms have been test. What does that mean? Okay, from within out means that you have to detox. All right, we all understand that the body needs the detox. Okay, from the head down, we have to believe that we can heal, and in reverse order, this means that it is from the last symptom that you've had. So for instance, if the last problem you've had was bronchitis, the first thing that has to happen is the body has to detox all that catarrh and mucus, and all of that has to come out. So we have to allow the body to heal itself. Okay, let's look at some eyes. This is a true blue eye color. And since you're on the Facebook group, you've probably seen I have posted pictures of eyes. Okay, there are basically, in constitutional iridology, there are 3 different colors of eyes. There's blue, brown, and mixed. Now, Dr. Jensen used to say that all eyes are blue. And of course, everyone is born with blue eye, and then the pigmentation comes in, okay? So we all start with the blue eye. This is a true blue eye, okay? It's called the lymphatic, a German lymphatic eye. It's found in people of European descent. Okay, and most people with blue eye tend to have a lymphatic, respiratory lymphatic weaknesses. Okay, and these are because a lot of these people like dairy. Okay, they use a lot of dairy, and they tend to accumulate uric acid in their bodies. And some people will have kidney problems. They'll have problems with anything having to do with respiratory, sinus, bronchitis, asthma, respiratory tract infections, kidney infections, kidney stones, all kinds of problems. Now, just because they have a blue eye doesn't mean that they're going to have any of these problems. Okay, so in iridology, we have to remember that we are looking at the genetic, and we are looking at 3 generations. So we're looking at the mom, the daughter, the grandma, or the grandpa, and so on. So we're looking at 3 generations. But typically, with a blue-eyed person, they tend to have lymphatic and respiratory weakness. It also depends, of course, on how they live. Okay, what somebody eats, what somebody drinks, how they live, where they live, how they live, their lifestyle. There's so many factors involved. But when we look at the eyes, we're looking at many different things. Okay, so let's look at the next color eye. The next color eye is a mixed colored eye. This is called mixed biliary. And this is very, very common. Very seldom do I see a true brown eye. Okay, now notice the difference. You saw the blue eye. If I can go back. Okay, here's the blue eye. The blue eye is perfectly blue, and you see a lot of fibers in this eye. Now, if we go to the next eye, here's a mixed biliary eye. This one here, we still can see the fibers here in this eye, but we also see a lot of orange pigmentation. Oranges, browns, more colors coming in. Okay, and so what does that mean? This usually has to do with somebody that has, a person would typically have digestive issues. Okay, this is usually the colors sit on top of the iris, and it's concentrated normally in the center of the eye, and this is the digestive tract here. This is the stomach and colon here in the center. Okay, and then out here, these are the organs out here, and then of course on the outside is the skin and the lymph. And so normally when we see any of these pigments here, we see any of this coloration, and then we also see the fibers, the blue in here, then we know that this is a biliary iris. Okay, so normally digestive issues having to do with stomach, liver, colon, pancreas, anything having to do with bowel and stomach issues.
Would that include gallbladder?
It includes gallbladder. A lot of this eye type, migraines. A lot of times these people are more tense, and I think that tension causes a lot of problems because they hold that tension and they send it down into their digestive tract, or causes tension and then you get that migraines. Also, food allergies. Candida is very common in this eye color, and allergies. So, we've got a lot going on here when we looked at a mixed eye. Some people say that a mixed eye, you can see both blue and brown in there. With this eye here that I've got here, you can see the blue here all the way around. You see the orange sitting up on top, and you see the pigments, but you don't really see any brown. We've got some genetic pigments here that have settled in these areas, but you don't really see brown. So it really depends on the eye. It really depends on the person. And, there's also emotional issues that go into all of this as well. And, with any person, anytime there's a physical weakness, there's always an emotional, aspect to that. And so, we have to look at all those parts. Okay, the last eye is a brown eye, and you can see the difference here. Huge difference. Okay, here's a brown eye. This is German brown eye type. And here, if you look at this brown eye, it is just brown. Okay, you don't see any fibers. It has a very velvety texture. Okay, and my comment about Stanford, making a comment about the white ring going around the iris having to do with hardening of the arteries and potential stroke, things like that. This is very typical in a true brown eye because the brown eye tends to have blood issues, okay? They tend to have more problems with the bones, the blood, more issues with calcium, more issues with cholesterol and hardening of the arteries and those types of things. Okay, so here you see some of the issues that are more common with a brown eye type person. And we really don't see very many brown-eyed people, at least here in California. I get one here and there. Most of the colored eyes that I see are mostly blue and mixed. And sometimes there are questions about that because depending on the pigmentation that's in the mixed eye. So here you see the difference between a blue, a mixed, and a brown eye. Okay, this is an iridology chart. This is Dr. Jensen's iridology chart. And I just kind of want to go over this here and how this works. The right eye shows the right side of the body. The left eye shows the left side of the body. In the very center here, you have the stomach. Okay, here's the left side of the stomach, the right side of the stomach. Around that, you have the intestine. Small intestines come down. The second goes across, ascending colon goes up. Transverse colon goes across, descending colon, and out. Okay, at the top part of the body is the head, the brain. Here's the left side of the brain, the right side of the brain. The bottom part of the body, you have the legs, the thigh, the foot, kidney, organs on the bottom. The left side and the right side. Okay, on the right side, you have the liver. Left side, you have the spleen, you have the heart. So the heart goes on both sides on some charts. On the outside here, you have the lungs. This is the breast here, and the little blue spot is the nipple. These lines are the vertebrae, the spine. Okay, and here is the right side as well. Then on the very outside of your body, you have your skin. On the outside of the iris, you have the skin, and right inside that, you have the lymphatic and circulatory system on both sides. When you're looking at the eye, you're looking at the right and the left. This is the gallbladder here, right above the liver, okay, on the right, and the pancreas is right here on the right at 7 o'clock. Here's thyroid. Here's the right side of the thyroid, the left side of thyroid. So basically, wherever we see any kind of markings in any of these areas, spots, lines, anything that looks like a hole, anything that's a bright white or a coloration, anything that doesn't belong there, that looks like it doesn't belong, okay, those typically might be chemical deposits, might be genetic pigments, might be weaknesses, and I'm going to go over just a few of those today. Okay, but this is typically the chart that we use and all the different areas that we break down when we look at the eyes. Okay, so one of the things that's really important, now that you're listening to this intro, you know, it's really important that you do not go and stand in front of somebody and look at their eyes and go, let's see, you have a blue eye, so therefore you're going to have lymphatic respiratory weakness. And it's really hard not to do that because once you start looking at eyes, the first thing you want to do, you usually look at people's eyes anyway when you talk to them, but the first thing you want to do is you want to start looking at everybody's eyes. And that's fine as long as you're in a class and you have permission to do that. Otherwise, it's considered an infringement of privacy, you know, and so you don't want to do that. But one of the first things after you've determined the color of the eye, you've already determined that it's a blue eye, a mixed eye, or a brown eye, then you want to look at their constitution or their genetic background. How strong is their body? I've listed 3 here where we have what we consider a strong constitution, meaning that the fibers are very nice and straight. We don't see a lot of markings in here, a lot of colors. We see a few of these little holes here, but very few. Not a lot of settlements, not a lot of problems, dark skin, cholesterol problems, very little. So we consider that a strong constitution. This one here is similar, except that we have, these are called lacuna here, and these are genetic weaknesses, or inherent weaknesses, as Dr. Jensen used to say. These are areas that could cause this person potential problems. Okay, so we see more of these. We see a little bit more markings up here in the head and around at the bottom here, and so that the constitution is not as strong. And then here in the bottom picture, there's a lot more markings. There's a lot of different things going on in this iris. And so it doesn't look as strong as this iris. So we have a strong, a medium, and a weak. And of course, this is going to vary based on, you know, the types of people that you see, where you live, what's going on, and so on. Okay, so let's look at a few things. One of the things that Dr. Jensen talked about is the disease stages or levels. Okay, so with levels of inflammation, we typically talk about white being acute, gray being subacute, dark gray being chronic, and black being degenerative or destructive. Okay, and then this shows up in the different layers of the iris. So when a layer is raised in the iris, it's usually going to be white, and that is going to be usually when somebody has an infection or somebody has a cold, okay, or something is painful, like that. When something is in a subacute, that's usually a little darker than the iris color itself. When something is chronic, that's usually when something is very dark in the eye, and that's usually when somebody will go to the doctor, is when there's a chronic problem that they're having problems with all the time. And degeneration, that's when we get into some serious problems. And over here, I've drawn some of the things here where you can see subacute is a little bit darker than the eye, chronic and degenerative. And we don't go into a lot of this. I don't usually use these terms very much, but it's still good to know this. It's still good to understand the terms. So these few slides here talk about the 4 different levels. And a lot of us use software to work with the eyes, and the software stops us from diagnosing because it's illegal to diagnose from the eyes. It's okay to analyze the eye, but we're not supposed to diagnose. So it's okay to say that there could be weakness in those areas. We're not really supposed to use medical treatment. So let me show you a few signs here. Okay, these are lacuna, and you see them. I've drawn them here on the right side. There can be 2 different types. There can be open lacuna or closed lacuna. A closed lacuna is basically encapsulated, and an open lacuna is open. So for instance, right here at the bottom at 6 o'clock, this would be considered an open lacuna. These here at 5 o'clock, this would be closed. Okay, all of these small circles here up at 2 o'clock, these here at 12, these are all closed. Okay, and these show us inherent weakness. This can show us that there's problems in the body. All right, and depending on what color they are, this determines what level of activity, whether it be, something painful or something chronic where a person is normally having problems. And usually people come for iridology because they're having a problem. They want to know what's going on, what's causing it, and how can I get rid of this health problem. And so we can look at the eyes and we can say, oh, okay, well, you're getting a lot of problems with bronchitis and pneumonia, and look over here, you have a lacuna, several lacuna in your bronchioles and lungs, and so maybe that's causing some of the problem. So it's a nice way of evaluating what's going on with these bodies. Okay, anemia in extremities, and I've drawn this so that you can see this shows up on the outside of the iris, actually on the sclera. The white part of the eye here is called the sclera. Okay, and I've drawn it. It's not actually on the eye, it's on the outside, and it's a very pale blue ring that shows outside here, if you can see that on the eye. Okay, and this has to do with congestion. So if you know anybody with cold hands and feet, this usually has to do with circulation to the extremities. So there's lots of different things people can do for that, and that's very common in a lot of eyes, and I've listed some things that you can do, including can eat baths and vitamins and stimulating circulation with herbs, walking, and so on. Okay, arcus senilis. This is considered the arc of old age, and I've drawn this here on the right to show you kind of where it is in the iris. And over here on the left, you can see the eye, that there's kind of this brownish, whitish cover over the top of the eye. Okay, and this is called the arc of old age. It's basically like brain anemia. So if you know anybody that's having trouble with memory, all right, senility, any kinds of problems having to do with memory, slow thinking, This has to do with the arc of old age usually. But even younger people are having problems with this. It comes from being vertical and the heart always having to pump against gravity. And these are some things that, that people can do. Again, stimulating circulation, plant boards, exercises, working with herbs, and so on. Okay, assimilation ring. This is very important because, of course, we are what we assimilate. So here I've drawn it around the pupil. Right around the pupil, you have the assimilation ring, and around that you have the stomach, and then inside here you have the colon. And this is one area where they've renamed. It used to be called the assimilation ring for overacid or underacid stomach, and now they're calling it the pupillary or pigment rough. This is right next to the pupil here. You will see kind of a brownish, reddish little ring. And then here around the pupil, you'll see kind of a whitish, brownish ring here. This is the stomach right here. Now, if this stomach was working absolutely perfectly, we wouldn't see it in this eye. Okay, if this person's body was functioning at optimal, then the stomach would not show up like this. Okay, so the fact that it's showing up as a ring tells us that there's a problem. All right, and then this ring here, this white ring here that's not perfectly round, this is the autonomic nerve wreath or the collarette. This is what separates the digestive tract from all the organs. So all the organs are out here. Okay. The next item is what we call a lymphatic rosary. And there again, it's been changed to flocculations, tophi, or hydrogenoid subtype. Okay, and it looks like a rosary, like little spots going around the eye. And you see here that I've drawn this. And then you can see here on the iris where these little white spots going all the way around. Okay, this has to do with the immune system. When it's white like this, it usually means somebody may have an infection. The immune system's on alert. It could have to do with candida. It could have to do with the environmental. It could have to do with a lot of different things. Oh, and also this, if you see this here, it looks like fat in the sclera here. This is the nose over here. And sometimes this will accumulate on the sclera. This has to do with the gallbladder, and this is the gallbladder's way of showing that the person is not breaking down their fats very well. Okay, so back to the lymphatic rosary. I got off track there. So lymphatic rosary has to do with the immune system, and it usually can be this ring here. This lymphatic rosary can be orange. It can actually be brown. It can be white. A lot of times it's toxic. I've seen these where they're very dark when people have gone through different medical procedures. And very important that people keep the lymph clean and moving. And, lymphatic massage. There's all sorts of things that can help to move the lymph. Of course, exercise is one of the best things for it. Very important. And I see this, blue eyes, I see this in almost all blue eyes. I see lymphatic rosary. A lot of mixed eyes, you can see it. Unfortunately, a brown eye, you can't see all the pretty markings, but you have to assume based on what's going on with the person's body that some of those markings are there. And here's a list of the functions of the lymphatic system. Neutralizes toxins and poisons, returns water from tissues to the blood, returns leak protein to the blood, transports fats in the body, transports hormones, destroys foreign bacteria, produces antibodies, and it makes up the largest content of fluid in the body. It carries more waste than the blood. So it's very, very important. Okay, these are nerve stress sensitivity rings. And I have, once in a while, I'll see somebody that doesn't have these rings. And again, you'll see that I've drawn them over here on the right side. And then the left side, we have them on the left side. These are called nerve stress and sensitivity rings because it's not always stress. Sometimes a person is very, very sensitive, emotionally sensitive. Okay, they've changed the name. The new terminology is contraction furrows, simply because the way that these are created is when you come up to stress, the pupil will open and contract very fast and create these rings. It actually looks like somebody took a knife and actually cut into the iris itself. And now we count the rings. We count to see how many rings there are. Dr. Jensen used to say that 1 or 2 rings is good. It means that somebody is productive and they'll get their work done. When you get up into 5 or 6 rings, then sometimes the person is getting into trouble. And a lot of times when we have these rings, we also have these lines here, which is called radii scleraris, and this has to do with the nervous system as well.
Are those reversible?
The nerve rings will go away. They will calm down based on a person's stress, and they will get brighter based on a person's stress. So it really depends. I have one person that their rings went away, but it usually really is a genetic type of thing. It's just the way the person deals with stress and how they how they deal with stress in their body. So, but the rings will get bright and they'll also calm down based on the nervous system and how they're doing.
Okay.
Okay. I'll give you an example. I was a speaker for IPA, I don't know how many years, about 3 or 4 years ago now. And Leo was there at the expo with his camera and his little TV, and he wanted to take pictures of my eyes. And it was before I talked. I was going to talk Saturday morning. I was the first speaker Saturday morning, and this was Friday afternoon. And so he said, "Can I take pictures of your eyes?" And I said, "Sure." So he took pictures, and I have these rings in my eyes. And when he posted the pictures on the TV, the rings were incredibly bright. I mean, just so bright and so white. I'll never forget it. And he said, "Wow, what happened to you?" I said, "I'm talking tomorrow morning. What do you think?"
That'd be me.
I'm really nervous. I was so incredibly nervous about talking. And, what I really should have done, and I didn't even think to do it, is after I spoke, after you speak, you're really calm. You get to sit there for the rest of the time and just relax. I really should have had him take pictures after and compared the before rings to the after rings, and I didn't think of it. I thought about it after I left, right? So, but anyway, these people need a lot of relaxation. They need a lot of meditation, anything to calm them down and help them deal with their, massage, anything to help them deal with stress. Okay, radii scleraris. This is another one that they've changed to radial furrows. We used to call them parasite lines. That's not really acceptable now. We can say that there may be parasite tunnels, or this person's body is conducive to parasites. We're not supposed to say this. I left it in here just so I could talk about it. But saying parasites is not really accepted. We're not supposed to do anything like that. But these are the lines that are coming from the digestive tract and going out into the body. Sometimes they start, and you can look at this eye, sometimes they start here at the stomach and go out into the body. Sometimes it starts right here at the bowel line, at the collarette, and goes out into the body. Some of them are short, some of them are long. So we have minor and major. And this can also have to do with leaky gut syndrome, leaky bowel. It can have to do with all sorts of things. It also has to do with the nervous system. Okay, they resemble the rays of the sun. That's why Dr. Jensen labeled it radii scleraris. Okay, and this has to do with the bowels. So you have to take good care of the bowels, make sure that the person is detoxing, and also using bitters, because bitters will help in case there are parasites, in case the person does have a tendency towards that, or towards issues with the liver. This person, for instance, has a pigment right over here about 8 o'clock, and this is the liver area. So, this person does have some liver issues going on. So we can see a little bit of that. We also see this in people that have headaches. This is the brain area here. Right below the brain, right here above the bowel, is the sinus. And when these lines go up into the sinus, sometimes people have a tendency towards sinus infections and sinus headaches and, clogging of sinuses and pressure in the head and all those kinds of things we can see. Okay, scurfurin, very, very, very common, very common. This is actually on the iris, and it's at the perimeter of the iris, and you can see it here. It's really pretty. When you can really see it is when you watch television. Look at the models, look at the people on TV, and look at their eyes. And now that you've taken this little class, you're going to watch TV and go, wow, look at that. They have a scurfurin. You're going to see this repeatedly when you watch a show on TV and you see somebody's eyes. This is the ring that goes around the outside of the iris. Okay, and the new terminology is not scurfurin, but scurfurin subtype. Okay, so we see this in a blue eye. This is a blue eye. We see this in a mixed eye. Sometimes we can see in a brown eye, but there again, it's hard to see in a brown eye. And notice how white. See how white this eye is? Lots of white here. Okay, this is not the true color of this eye, but I really like this eye because it's so white. And remember, white means a lot of times pain, inflammation, and a blue eye, remember, tends to have respiratory lymphatic problems. This person probably has issues with joints, or maybe even tendencies towards pain in their body. Who knows what the problem's going on. And then they have a scurfurin here. Scurfurin has to do with the skin. It's the inability for the skin to eliminate. Okay, the skin is the largest organ. It's considered the third kidney. It eliminates uric acid. And we put lotions on our skins. We wear clothing that doesn't breathe. And our skin can eliminate. And so what we found is about a year of dry skin brushing, and this ring will go away. Okay, about a year.
I had a question about that. I was actually just looking up the other day. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it was called something else when I looked it up, and maybe it's two different things. The limbal ring, is that what that is?
Say that again. What's the ring called?
Limbal.
A limbal. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. I'm not.
They called it the gray ring around the cornea, or the dark area around your eye. Maybe I'm mistaken about what it is, but I thought that was what they were saying that rim was called.
Was it on the perimeter of the iris?
I thought so. I don't know. Maybe I'm mistaken. I had wondered because I have a very dark area around my iris, and so that's why I had looked it up. Just wondering what it was, but it's that area that you're pointing to. So since it was a different name, I wondered if maybe I had the I part wrong.
I don't know. We'd have to look it up. You can send that to me on Facebook, and we'll look it up and do some research on it. I'd be curious to know if that is, that may be somebody else. There's a lot of different types of iridology out there, right? This is Jensen and constitutional iridology, which is what I teach. I teach a combination of Jensenian iridology and constitutional iridology, which is European iridology. And there are other people that teach red, and there are other types of iridology also out there. And so I'd be interested in the term, and we could look it up and see if that's just another name that they've given to this area. But if it's on the outside if it's on the perimeter of the iris here, then that is the skin area. Because it starts with an L, I would be more inclined to say that it probably has to do with the immune system, like the lymphatic rosary, but I'd have, like I said, I'd have to see. Okay.
Well, I'll send you a link because I might be thinking of the wrong part of the eye, so that's entirely possible. It's just my fault.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm real curious now. Okay, let's look at the next sign here. This is a sodium, cholesterol, and calcium out of solution ring. So there are multiple rings that can form around the iris. So you saw that there was anemia in extremities, right? That's the little blue ring on the side. There's a scurfurin, which is the skin that's on the iris itself. There's a cholesterol ring. There's a sodium ring. There's a calcium out of solution ring. There's a hardening of the arteries ring. There's many different rings. And so I'm kind of going over a couple of them. And over here on the right, you see that I've drawn a cholesterol ring in yellow, because normally it's going to be thick, and it's going to be more of a yellowish, orangish color. It won't be white like this when somebody has cholesterol problems. And this one here, there's a sodium ring. A sodium ring is usually when somebody is taking in too much salt in their diet, and that'll show up kind of as an opaque ring. And then there's a calcium out of solution ring, which is like a hardening of the arteries, which is this white ring. Okay, and so we've got multiple rings. And here we're talking about the new terminology is lipemic diathesis. Okay, and here we have various shades of white. So these are the different rings. I've talked about a couple of the rings here. And so whenever we see these rings, we know that it's interfering with circulation, with the arteries, and there are problems. And people need to really take care of that. They need to change their diet, right? They need to exercise. They need to lose weight. Who knows what it is? Change their stress level, lower their inflammation. You know, whatever's going on, they need to take care of. And so there are many things that can be done to take care of all that stuff. But these are the rings, the different kinds of rings that show up in the eyes. Okay, here's another ring, venous congestion. This is on the eye, and you can see it's very dark blue. Okay, and this is different from anemia in extremities in that this is actually on the eye itself. Okay, it's a blue ring on the eye. There is actually a little bit of anemia in extremities in this eye as well. So there's both rings here. Okay, but this has to do with circulation as well. And a lot of people that have this ring have varicose veins. Okay, problems with the circulation. Okay, now I just want to thank you for coming to the Introduction to Iridology webinar. And we have a lot of information on the website about iridology. We have the different color eyes. We have a lot of information about iridology. We have free webinars, other webinars, and if you're interested in taking our courses, we have courses as well. And let me stop the share here.
Thank you so much for going over everything with me. Everybody else missed out.
You're welcome.